Robert Scott Bell.
Yeah, we got farm freedom, food freedom, ranching freedom, freedom to move about the American cabin. Threatened in a big way over the last few days, particularly, at least the culmination of a lot of things that have been going on outside of the purview of the mainstream news and covered incredibly well with what we call the new media, the rise of the new media that wasn't around to the extent that might have changed the outcome of things like Ruby Ridge or Waco and the events there. And we've been covering today, earlier in the day with Stephen Ure, we even talked about this, the situation out in the Bureau of Land Management attacking Cliven Bundy and his family, the ranchers there, from access to the land. A lot of layers of misinformation out there. A little bit of nothing from most of the mainstream media. I think Fox News covered it a little bit after the fact. And yet the new media, the emerging new media that's growing by leaps and bounds day by day, may have helped to avoid a bloodbath there. Absolutely extraordinary. Very thrilled to have my good friend, the health ranger, Mike Adams, taking some time out this afternoon to join us as well, because Natural News has been right there as well as Gary Franchi from Next News Network. We hope to hear from. It looks like we won't hear from Pete Santilli because they've shut down the cell networks there, but we'll confirm that. But Mike, thanks for being on the Robert Scott Bell Show. Appreciate you so very much.
Hello, Robert. It's great to join you today, this day where American history is unfolding in real time. History is being made.
Yeah, you've just published a series of articles that have come out over the last 24 hours or less. This one about the American Revolution 2.0 has begun. Battle of Bunkerville won by the people without firing a single shot. Hallelujah.
Yeah. Let me read you a quote from a person who was on the front lines in a standoff against armed BLM agents at the gates of the cattle compound where BLM had stuffed all the cattle that they'd stolen from the Bundy family. Quote, "We were among 500 militiamen at the gates. The militia went muzzle to muzzle with the BLM, fingers on triggers, safeties off. We told them we're not backing down, and we are prepared to lay our lives on the lines for these principles." That's how close this came to a shooting war, Robert, and I want to say I want to thank those who sent prayers and blessings for peace to prevail, for nonviolence to prevail. This battle was won without a single shot being fired, and let me say on the record, if it had gone into a shooting, BLM personnel would have been absolutely slaughtered. They were surrounded. They were surrounded by thousands of armed American citizens who were fed up and were willing to die for principle. That's what just happened.
Well, what we are up against is the kind of the Matrix-like description of the American people being in a matrix that don't see through these things and will be buying into the lines by the mainstream media to vilify not only the rancher in this case, who they say is somehow a deadbeat. He wasn't paying whatever dues were demanded of him by the federal government, the Bureau of Land Management, and then the demonizing of the American people who are armed and just hungry for guns and shootouts. I think what we see in the rise of the new media is a different consciousness seeping through or beyond or overrunning their dams of limitation of awareness.
Well, let's be clear. The mainstream media, in their willful blackout of this historical event, the media has zero credibility at this point. Maybe before this, you could have argued, well, sometimes they cover important things, sometimes they don't. They will cover freedom fighters in Kiev. They will cover Operation Iraqi Freedom. They won't cover American freedom. They won't cover freedom fighters in Nevada. They received a directive, almost certainly from the White House, to have a total blackout on this story and pretend it wasn't happening. So let's have no illusions. The mainstream media at this point forward is nothing but theater, nothing but propaganda. This is one of the most important stories in American history, certainly the most important story of the year so far. Any media outlet that refused to cover this basically admitted that they are a propaganda organization not interested in real news, period. Let there be no more debate about that point.
Yeah, in fact, I think we have some audio from Pete Santilli confronting one of the BLM. I hesitate to call them goons. I mean, I don't want to use derogatory language, but let's be honest. If you're standing against this and, let's say, representing a federal land grab that may go up beyond the federal level to international, And we'll get into those issues this hour. I got to take my hat off to Pete Santilli, former U.S. Marine, standing up and not in a violent way, but just saying, hey, this is what's going down here. This is what's happening. You are in the wrong. And it's really quite extraordinary. Pete
really deserves a major journalism award. He upstaged everybody. CNN, he's being called the Wolf Blitzer of the Liberty Movement now. He went on the scene, spent his own money. No one was funding his operation, and he was broadcasting live and breaking news hour by hour. He even attempted to negotiate peace with the BLM in a secret audio recording that we published late last night. You could hear Pete Santilli telling BLM Director Daniel Love that BLM directors were going to be arrested, and that even the county sheriff was going to be arrested if they failed to uphold their oath to the Constitution. And Pete didn't back down.
No, he didn't. Let's give a listen. We've got about a 30-second or less excerpt, thanks to Super Don here, and you can hear this firsthand, what went on.
Interfere and impede, you will be arrested. I don't know how you plan on arresting me, but good luck with that.
Well, there's going to be some law enforcement officials that are going to be going to jail if they're unconstitutional.
Okay, yeah, don't do that. That's not going to end well for you.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm relaying the message.
That doesn't happen. And again, I've seen your numbers right now. You better hope that 10,000 show up. Because if you show up with those numbers, we got plenty of people here to take all those people to jail. So don't do that.
Sure.
So that was Pete Santilli confronting that BLM guy. Did you hear him say, you better hope you bring 10,000? Evidently, enough folks showed up that they backed down.
Yeah, listen to the arrogance in the voice of BLM Special Agent Love. What an odd name to have for someone in such intimidation and coercion. But the arrogance is evident there. You better bring 10,000 people if you hope to do anything. And he's like, don't go there. That never happens. Like, law enforcement people are never arrested by the citizens, is what he's saying. Don't even try it. And that's the kind of arrogance that, America tried to get away from with the Revolutionary War. It's the kind of arrogance that the King of England would have used for his subjects. And that's the way the feds tend to treat American citizens these days, unfortunately.
Yeah, Mike, and as much as I wouldn't want to admit it, we'd have to acknowledge that the people, with that concept of the we the people, have kind of rolled over and allowed this to happen over a number of generations now. And we're looking at, my wife and I were just talking off the air before the show, how we're concerned about the international nature of this, the debt for nature swaps. This is a UNESCO heritage site. Yet there are so much that has come out, whether it be Harry Reid's son and the solar farms from China, or the fracking, the land leases, the millions of dollars paid for land leases to BLM for fracking or oil or gas exploration, and a number of other things. But let's just look at it this way. I say we the people, but the corporate United States has been involved in invading other countries for a long time now. If the UN blue helmets show up, would that be a karmic retribution? We've been invading lands, now they're coming to invade us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's hard to understand. It's hard to really get down to the real reasons why BLM decided to seize this land. But what we can all agree on, I mean, even people on the left or the right, people who are vegetarians and meat eaters, what we can all agree on is that the militarization of the government is out of control. When you've got a government that brings guns and raids James Stewart, the raw milkman of California, for distributing raw milk, fresh milk. You've got a government that arrests women for growing gardens in their own front yards. You've got a government that brings snipers and helicopters and hundreds of armed men to a desert dispute, which they claim is about a tortoise. Clearly, this is out of control. Clearly, this is not limited government respecting the boundaries that have been defined for it in the Constitution. So part of the outrage here, it's not even about the Bundy family in particular, and it's not even about those cows in particular, which, by the way, are free-range cows. So a lot of people are out there saying, well, we should all be buying free-range meat. Yeah, Bundy's raising free-range meat, just for the record. This is about the principle, something much larger, where a government uses excessive coercion, intimidation, threats of violence to get its way. And the American people simply won't stand for it. And that's what we saw here. The Battle of Bunkerville has been won by the people, and the people aren't going to put up with this kind of tyranny and coercion.
Yes, and of course there are a lot of layers to this story. We don't want to oversimplify it, but in some ways, yes, we can, and we have, and Natural News has covered extensively this militarization to ludicrous levels to go after, the folks that are just providing raw, real foods for people that want them, not by force, not by coercion. And we are now joined by Gary Franchi from the Next News Network, and he's got other layers of this. Gary, congratulations, kudos to you for the coverage like no other media outlet, as long as we've also acknowledged Pete Santilli and what he's doing. We're on with Mike Adams here, the health ranger from Natural News. Gary, we got about less than a minute before the first break, but we wanted to bring you into the discussion real quick.
Well, I couldn't be doing this without the support of our producers and the people behind the scenes. I just happen to be the mouthpiece for this thing. An observer and a reporter, and I know you got a break coming up, but I can give you some details after the break about the investigation that we're currently doing into the land property owners around.
Perfect. Yes, that's where we want to go next. Yeah. Gary Franchi on with us from nextnewsnetwork.com. And, of course, Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, streaming live through naturalnewsradio.com and our syndicator, GCN, broadcasting healing on a geopolitical basis today on the Robert Scott Bell Show. Glad you are all with us. We're going to get to the deeper depths of this story after this break, so stick around. Tell your friends. Mike Adams, Gary Franchi on the Robert Scott Bell Show. More next.
Who'd you say that, man?
All right, so you want the news on all levels, healing from a physiological level, emotional, mental, economic, political, spiritual, all of that's involved here on the Robert Scott Bell Show. Doing that also well, of course, Mike Adams, the Health Ranger from naturalnews.com, and our good friend Gary Franchi from Next News Network. And Mike, you guys have been burning the midnight oil, you and Gary, on this story.
Yeah, there's no rest for real journalists, but I do want to give a shout out to everybody in alternative media, because what we've witnessed here is the mainstream media pretending that this history is not happening in America, while the alternative media, of which, of course, you are a part, GCN Radio Network, Natural News, my website, Gary Franchi, Next News Network. You've got Pete Santilli, of course, on the ground, on the scene. Adam Kokesh has been covering this. Drudge Report putting out major links to it. Steve Quayle has put out many, many links to this story. It's, what we're witnessing really here is spontaneous acts of world-class journalism from citizen journalists, and we have upstaged the mainstream media on this entire story. It's a turning point, really, for media in America.
Yeah, and Gary, you're a big part of this growth, and we appreciate you very much. And the things that you're breaking and covering on here, extraordinary. So what have you got for us?
Well, basically, in a couple of videos, we've sort of teased some information that we're digging up. Right now, actually, we have a BLM insider who's going to be revealing an extensive list of corporations and individuals, the parties, the people who have interest in the land around the Bundy property, the so-called public lands or the free-range lands. Like I said, in a couple of videos, we have quoted Rusty Hill, who was a land broker for that area. And where Rusty, in his time, he actually worked, he was a volunteer for the BLM for 20 years. And what he was doing for the BLM while he was there, he was the guy that would go out and plot the lines. He would go, okay, this is your property line, this is your jurisdiction. Then after he stopped working for them, he was getting hired by private corporations, because these corporations were coming in there buying up huge tracts of land, and they didn't know where the land was. They just bought it. So he had to go out there, and he'd have to draw the lines in the sand, literally draw the lines in the sand, and tell, okay, call Hughes Corporation, Howard Hughes Corporation, this is your plot. Tell the other corporation this is their plot. Tell the municipality this is their plot. So in doing that, he has an intricate knowledge of the parties and people who own the land out there. Now, when this story broke, he was like, holy cow. He's like, I know this very well, and I'm actually sitting on an hour-long screencast video that he has shot that we're perfecting it right now. there's no messing around. When this is released, you'll be able to see through Google Earth, through his entire web. I mean, he's recording his entire research. You'll be able to follow him through it. He'll narrate through it, and you'll see how he researches the corporations, the people, the names, all the parties who are going after the land around the Bundys. So this is so much bigger than what the government claims is a tortoise, and I think it goes even further than this Harry Reid deal with the $6 billion solar plant. There are corporations involved, and what Rusty's explained to me is that there are minerals in the ground. There is mineral water in the ground that is crucial to the military-industrial complex and the weapons manufacturing industry. So it goes so much deeper than a solar plant. And Harry Reid, I'm sure Harry Reid's the one, signing the deals and getting things pushed around, of course, through his son with the plant. But it's so much deeper than that. The mineral content, the mineral water on the ground is for weapons manufacturing. So the military-industrial complex is putting pressure on the BLM.
They got their fingerprints all over this. We're going to see where that goes. And Mike Adams, as we were warned how many decades ago by a president leaving the office about the military-industrial complex, they're still playing their games.
Oh, yeah, of course they are. And you got to remember, almost everything that we're told by the government and the mainstream media is a cover story. And also think about who's doing the real journalistic investigations these days. It's not Washington Post. It's not New York Times. It's people like Gary Franchi. It's people like Pete Santilli. It's like Kit Daniels over there at InfoWars who did that great article about the solar array. I mean, these are the real journalists of America today. And what you're doing, Robert, this is real journalism, asking real questions about unfolding historical events. Where's the mainstream media? They've surrendered.
They're popping
lunch.
Yeah, they're popping Prozac and pretending that we don't exist. Or are they? We're going to find out. Let's see, where do we think this is going? Obviously, it's a great victory, but we don't want to be naive about things that are being plotted or planned as this has happened and as we've witnessed it, thanks to Natural News, thanks to Gary Franchi and Next News Network. And we're going to answer some of those questions and ask some more when we come back from this break.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.
America, we have freed a little portion of this land, Clark County, Nevada. Did we enjoy swimming in the river, anybody? Did you feel free? Did you see those cows come home to the range?
I believe we've just heard from Cliven Bundy out there at the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, trying to attack this rancher based on, I would say, false pretense, and that would be an understatement. And we're continuing now with Mike Adams, the health ranger, as well as our friend Gary Franchi from Next News Network. And Mike, the coverage of this, as we said, from the mainstream media has been, kind of whispers and crickets. We have the buzz going on in all of the new or alternative media. And what I find most extraordinary and beautiful about this, Mike, is the cooperation with all of the new media. You don't have somebody trying to dig and say, we're not working with you because we're our own. I mean, this is an extraordinary level of cooperation here as well.
Well, that's true. Again, spontaneous world-class journalism is what we're witnessing here. It's also worth noting that these stories don't really generate much revenue for all of the alternative media publishers. I mean, who exist on advertising, right? That's how they pay their bills, us included at Natural News. But these kinds of stories don't tend to attract people that are going to buy nutritional products or things like that. These stories are covered because they are the right thing to do, because this is history in the making. And all the people out there, like Pete Santilli, for example, he's spending money out of his own pocket, buying equipment, just doing what needs to be done, putting it on his credit cards. He knows he's going to have to pay the bills later. Gary Franchi, who's on your show right now, think about it. He's spending his weekend and his evenings doing this. Mainstream media journalists have the weekend off, but us in the alternative media, we're working hard, and we're doing this because it needs to be done. So, yeah, there's a lot of cooperation going on. And why? Because we're passionate about this stuff, Robert. Mm-hmm. We're not reading teleprompter scripts. We're not doing this because there's some corporate sponsor telling us what to do. We're fighting for the heart and soul of America, so we don't need any other motivation beyond that.
Well, we would get paid better if we were reading teleprompter scripts, but then we wouldn't be sleeping at night without the aid of Ambien. And that's not our passion or mission in life. And that's why we also have Gary Franchi with us with more revelations right now coming through Next News Network. Gary, once again, we appreciate you so much, and thanks for being here to let loose.
Well, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be a part of this, the revolutionary effort in the media. One thing to note, Mike, you brought up the blackout, the media blackout, the mainstream media has been silent in this, and what we're learning now is that this is the reason they are silent is because they're being directed to be silent, and it's so that they can track the chatter. And you always hear this, terrorist chatter, terrorist chatter. Well, because they're listening to every single thing that's being said. So if they can track the sources and where it's going, just like a plant with roots, they can track the roots and where the water is being sucked in to the plant. The same thing happens when the media, the alternative media, is disseminating information. When we shut down the main sources of media to a story, then they can pinpoint the sources, and then they can track every single node along the way to find out who's responding to it, and they can create a huge data matrix of the entire operation. I was at an event last weekend, and an NSA whistleblower, William Binney, sat there in front of 50 people, and he laid out the entire NSA infrastructure. This guy worked for the NSA for like 35 years. He built the infrastructure that they use to harvest massive amounts of information. So he put his PowerPoint right in front of us and showed us exactly how it's done and how the data travels and how they create subsets of subsets of subsets based on keywords and connectivities. And they build an entire algorithmic social profile on every individual based on what they are doing, who they're communicating with, their bank records, everything. So this is just what they're doing here with this. By controlling the media, they're able to create these social profiles based on who's reading and watching what. Now, aside from that, let me get into these new points that are about the property itself. Okay, this is coming from Rusty Hill. He's been commenting on our YouTube videos. Go to our channel. You can engage Rusty directly on some of these videos. Now, Rusty says there is a specific interest to get Bundy's cattle off the grazing range east of the Virgin River and south to the Colorado. There's been continual eviction of people off of these lands north of the Colorado River and Lake Mead for quite a while now. They've wiped out whole towns so far. Because I've been finding some interesting dead ends that seem to be related to, here's the corporations now, Zion Bank Corp and the insurance company that owns it. And then he asked the question, I'd be asking, where's Harry Reid in this dispute? How is he related to Zion's Bank Corp? What were they doing in the late 70s and 80s with the land around there where they're controlling and why? Who is the shadowy company, Cedar Development Corp, who has an office, a P.O. box in Cedar City, Utah? So these are a couple points that he's bringing up. Now he says the BLM would not be so aggressive unless someone from high levels like in Congress or the presidency or the State Department, was ordering this kind of way over-the-top activity. Someone needs to go to the head of the BLM and demand some answers. He also goes on and addresses the Clark County Sheriff. He says also the issue of why the Clark County Sheriff is doing nothing is a good indication that there is a hush-up relationship going on between BLM and Clark County. Clark County will benefit from the corporate activities the BLM will be setting up in the future in this area. Now, forgive me if I'm reading here, but he says if you look at some of the high prices being paid for some of these parcels in the area, you can see a pattern that is not in any way consistent with $500 per acre of desert rangeland. Something big is trying to get something going on again. The biggest key is always with the water. Whoever doing whatever is going to need water to do it. Also, they're looking at this range is looking. The range is remote. It's easy to set up secret-oriented security and to have secret-oriented security, but still has close access to utilities and services. So,
well, there's Gary. I mean, it appears to be there. These are acts of desperation at this point, as you said, willing to go to a point where they risked a bloody confrontation with the people over what some might perceive as simply just a ranching issue. But because of your work and what Mike Adams does and others that we've referenced here and more, there's a digging below that surface, not only to find that this is about water and minerals and things related to the military-industrial complex, but maybe larger issues of UNESCO, debt for nature swaps, the bankruptcy of the corporate United States, and all of this playing together into one. I mean, these layers go so deep, yet at the same time, the mainstream media pretending that, if there is an argument as to why this is happening, it will be about crazy ranchers with guns just wanting to fight the federal government and nothing more.
Yeah, well, I think you need to take a look at Harry Reid and his company, Zions Bank Corp. I guarantee you, if someone looked at the Federal Election Committee donations that Harry Reid has received, I bet you will find that corporation dumping money into him or to a super PAC directly. So they always say, follow the money, follow the money. We're doing that right now.
Mike Adams, what do you perceive a next step is? Because they don't take too kindly to losing like this. That's why I am a little bit concerned, and that might be an understatement, as to the next layer, even though it appears on the surface it's a very successful, peaceful, nonviolent confrontation that has, turned in the favor of those who love liberty. Well,
here's my concern. Even though this was a peaceful victory by the people against obviously coercive, violent government, but that government, which is really, let's describe it honestly, as an empire, is extremely arrogant, as all empires eventually become and have done so throughout history. As an empire, the government cannot allow the people to set a precedent where they have power over the government. So they cannot allow this victory to stand. I have no doubt that the feds are already engineering some kind of backlash against this, perhaps even a false flag event to cause violence, blame it on the militia men, and then let that be the official story that the mainstream media finally runs with, and then to label everybody there as domestic terrorists. And once that is invoked, they can launch Hellfire missiles on the ranch, and most of the country will buy that as a justifiable response. So there are all kinds of nefarious, deceptive things that the government can do and is probably considering doing in order to turn this defeat of BLM into, in their minds, a victory of government dominance over armed citizens. That's where I'm afraid this is heading.
And Gary,
and Mike,
go ahead, Gary.
What the word is right now is, in strategic terms, they're calling this a feigned retreat, so that people lower their guard. People think, oh, they're all shouting in the street, victory, victory. Everyone goes home for supper. Well, in the meantime, as everyone stands down, then we have the real aggressor comes in. The Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the ATF, they go in. I mean, I've been seeing pictures that have been posted online of malicious snipers trained with trained guns on the BLM. I mean, on overpasses. I mean, this is all, you can find this right through the social networks. So when these photographs surface on the FBI desk and the ATF's desk, they're going to say, "This, we're not going to stand for this," and then they're going to go out there and they're going to escalate the situation even more. They're going to try and find out who these people are. They're going to round them up under the cover of darkness.
Yeah, of course, all kinds of nefarious tactics that they can use, including deception, of course, being the number one tactic. So I agree with you, Gary and Robert, that they are planning a way to turn this around. Again, they cannot tolerate the people having power over the feds. They won't stand for it.
Right. Well, don't let your guard down. Keep the cameras rolling in every way, shape, or form. Communicate this to your neighbor. Again, don't let a wonderful victory at this point fall into a dangerous, deadly, and bloody defeat. We recognize that there are people, as we've covered over the years, that don't value life the way you do, the way Mike does, and I perceive Gary, a good friend, also does. And so we can't, let's say, rest and say it's over, it's done. We'll continue to cover this story, guys. And Gary, appreciate you so much in the Next News Network, of course, working with Mike Adams, as I do, through Natural News and naturalnewsradio.com. As things break this week, you can be sure the Robert Scott Bell Show will also be here with you to relate these stories. Mike Adams, Gary Franchi, thank you both so very much.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, thanks for having us.